The first error we're going to look at is subject-verb agreement, and these come up a lot in your error IDs. Sometimes in your improving sentences, we're going to see those in the next video, but they come up most often in your error IDs, and it's going to be the same pattern again and again. So these should be relatively gettable, I think, in the grand scheme of things. Let's look at some examples. The uncompromising tone of a recent City Hall ordinance concerning the blocking of emergency vehicles and traffic jams carry a stern warning to motorists. Okay, so right off the bat, we might see that we have a verb here, carry. Well, whenever we find a verb, we say to ourselves, what is the subject that goes with carry? Well, we look at the sentence and we say, let's see, the uncompromising tone of recent City Hall ordinance concerning the blocking of emergency vehicles and traffic jams carry. So we look back, and actually the subject is tone. All this stuff here of a recent City Hall ordinance concerning the blockage of emergency vehicles and traffic jams, this is all just pretty much adjectival describing the tone, telling us what the tone is about, or the tone is of something. So this is not the subject. The subject, the simple subject, is just tone. Tone is singular. Carry here is actually not conjugated at all. It should just be carries. Well, I guess it is conjugated because it's plural then. But anyway, it should be carries, right? It carries, he carries, she carries, the tone carries. So for that reason, this is a subject-verb agreement error, and the answer is C. Let's look at this one. An economical and efficient recycling center is accessible to the public, responsive to community needs, and comply with current federal regulations governing waste disposal. Again, we see this verb comply. What is the subject? Well, we go back to the beginning and see an economical and efficient recycling center is accessible to the public, responsive to community needs, and comply with. So notice we can even see here, this is almost related to a parallel error, is singular. This is almost non-parallel, but in any event, who cares? We can see that this is going to be singular. Comply here is plural. We need to be complies, which is singular, because our subject is recycling center. So C is going to be our answer because it is subject-verb agreement error. 22. Experts agree that permanently modifying eating and exercise habits rather than merely dieting for brief periods are the key to controlling weight. So again, we see a verb and we say, all right, is there any subject verb disagreement here? Well, what's the subject of this? Well, this one's a bit tougher. It's number 22. Let's see. Experts agree that permanently modifying eating and exercise habits rather than merely dieting for brief periods are the key. So you might think, well, periods is plural, right? But periods is not the subject. Periods is just part of a prepositional phrase. What is the subject? Well, the subject here, a little bit tough to see, is permanently modifying eating and exercise habits. So really the simple subject is modifying, right? It is a gerund. It's a verb acting as a noun. It's a verbal. And here's a subject, right? We can eliminate all the other stuff and say experts agree that modifying habits is the key, right? If you get rid of all the stuff, you'll see that, okay, it's got to be is, not are. So the answer here is C because, again, subject-verb disagreement. Let's look at number 20. Careful analysis of pictures of the moon reveal that part of the moon's surface are markedly similar to the parts of the Earth's. Again, let's go through the choices. So A is another verb. Is it a subject-verb disagreement error? Well, let's see. Careful analysis of pictures of the moon reveal. Well, reveal here is plural. What is a subject? Well, it's careful analysis, right? It's that analysis that revealed the parts of the moon. So here we can see careful analysis. This is singular. Reveal is plural. So this should be reveals, right? Careful analysis reveals that part of the moon's surface, blah, 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 blah. So again, the answer to this one is A, subject-verb disagreement. For purposes of time, I'm not going through all the choices, as you can see. I'll only go through choices that might seem wrong for whatever reason. And that especially will happen on harder questions. I'm just focusing right now on the errors. The relationship between goby fish and striped shrimp are truly symbiotic, for neither can survive without the other. So again, are is a verb. What is the subject? Well, you might think the subject is goby fish and striped shrimp, but wait a minute. The real subject is relationship, right? Because it's the relationship between, here's a preposition, these two things. So it's the relationship that is symbiotic. So again, the answer is A because we have a subject-verb disagreement. So notice how the key this is number 28. It's one of the hard ones, but the key is finding that subject. And notice the subject's going to be usually closer to the beginning of the sentence than it will be closer to the verb. And that's a pattern that comes up a lot. They want you to see goby fish and striped shrimp are symbiotic and say, oh, well, that's right. And that would be right if these were the subject, but it's not. The subject is the relationship between them. So anything with prepositional phrases you could in some sense cross out and read the sentence that way. The relationship are truly symbiotic? No, the relationship is truly symbiotic. The only other things here that could be error, that could be seen as errors. No, nothing really looks rough. Let's look at 14. The newly elected prime minister, to the dismay of opponents from other parties, have argued for the strict regulation of campaign financing. So let's look at C. Notice parties. You might think, oh, well, parties have argued. Well, wait a minute. Who has done the arguing here? And who's the subject? Well, the subject here is the prime minister, right? The newly elected prime minister. This stuff you can pretty much ignore because it's anything within commas you can pretty much ignore because it's just non-essential information, non-restrictive. And read the sentence. The newly elected prime minister have argued? No, has argued. So the answer here is C. Yet again, another subject-verb disagreement. Remember, the subject's going to be closer to the beginning. It's not going to be in a prepositional phrase generally, not going to be in some kind of comma-off phrase. It's going to be near the beginning. It's going to be a simple subject, and that's what you have to find in order to find that error. Ongoing research by several scientists suggests that regular periods of meditation reduce blood pressure and are likely to contribute to other improvements in health. Okay, again, let's see. Ongoing research of several scientists. Well, here's a verb, suggest. Well, who's doing the suggesting? If you say several scientists, again, you've fallen for the fact that this is a prepositional phrase. This is not going to be your subject. The subject, the thing that's doing the suggesting, is the research. Research is singular. Suggest here is plural. So we need to make this suggests. Not ongoing research suggests that. It's ongoing research suggests that. So the answer here is going to be B. Storing bread in a refrigerator delays drying and the growth of mold, but increase the rate at which the bread loses flavor. Okay, so here we can see there's actually kind of a parallel clue that gives us a hint. We look at but increase, and we say, well, wait a minute. What is the subject here? So we have storing bread in the refrigerator delays, singular, right? Singular verb. Here's our subject, which is also singular. Storing bread delays drying and the growth of mold, but increases the rate at which the bread loses flavor. So again, this needs to be singular. Subject is storing bread, which is singular. Right now it's plural. So B is the answer. Every spring in rural Vermont, the sound of sap dripping into galvanized metal buckets signal the beginning of the traditional season for gathering maple syrup. So again, we have this plural noun next to this plural verb, and we might say that's okay. But again, what is doing the signaling? It is not the metal buckets. It is the sound of sap dripping into metal buckets that is signaling the beginning of the traditional season. So the sound of sap, this is singular. Signal, as you can see here, is plural. We need to make it signals in order for it to agree with the verb. Every spring, or the noun, every spring in rural Vermont, the sound of sap dripping into galvanized metal buckets signals the beginning of the traditional season, blah, blah, blah. And again, cross out all this stuff if you'd like, just to make the relationship clearer, because this is not unnecessary. It's just not really relevant to the grammar of the sentence. The sound of the sap signals, or you can say, get rid of this, the sound signals the beginning of the traditional season, right? Once you see it that way, I think it falls relatively clearly. Finally, the light emitted by high-intensity discharge car headlights are very effective in activating the reflective paints of road markers, thereby making driving at night safer. Okay, so again, we see a verb. It's plural. What is the subject? So you might say car headlights. Again, you're falling for it. By high-intensity car headlights, this is a prepositional phrase. Not going to be our subject. Not the thing that is or are very effective. It is the light that is emitted by these things that is very effective. So the answer here is going to be A. Yet again, another subject-verb agreement error. So you can see how repetitive these are. They pretty much test the same thing again and again and again and again. And if you could pick up on the pattern, and you can see this very clear pattern, it's pretty much almost the same thing every time. Pick up on that pattern, look for it. Every time you see a verb, make sure it is not breaking this rule. It's a question that you can definitely get, even on the hard questions. There'll be some wrinkles occasionally about where those can be a little bit more difficult, but even in the hards, they're still pretty gettable. All right, let's move on to subject-verb agreement errors in improving sentence questions.